We are live. At some point, I'm not sure when, but at some point, I'm going to not keep, singing Six the Musical at the beginning of every single one of these, but it's every time I hit live, it's all I can think of. What?
I didn't finish it. It's an unfinished braid. Guess
Here,
I
borrow
know.
mine. It's finished.
I guess I know what I'm doing first.
You can borrow mine. It's finished.
Oh, there you go.
My hair is doing wonky stuff. So, you're working on a braid.
Yeah.
I assume there's more to it than that.
They're my braided headbands, and I'm currently cutting the ends so they're even. Yeah. And then I'm going to work on my crochet butterflies as soon as I finish these, because I'm almost done.
I'm going to be working on something off and on. Let me know if it gets too loud at any point. But you were with me when I bought this, but for everybody else, I'm working on turning this button into a circle. It's already a circle, but like a ring essentially. And drilling it was not working because it's concave or convex, I guess, depending on which side you're looking at. And so I couldn't really clamp it down in place without like having to press it hard enough to break it because of the hollowness. And so I couldn't hold it in place. And the drill kept trying to catch on it, and yeah, anyway, so I'm filing a lot.
Oh, by hands. Oh, wow.
So yeah, I also will probably take quite a few breaks from doing it because it's going to be a minute before I actually get this all the way done. Because as it turns out, just sitting and filing stuff by hand is not actually super fun.
Really?
I need a pen. Just thought I'd show everybody my ear, close up of my ear, in case anybody was wondering what it looks like. I'm trying to.
There, it's finished now. I finished it now.
And I have a paper underneath because I'm just sitting on my bed. So rather than, I didn't feel like going to my workshop today, especially since I've been up since like somewhere between 2:30 and 3. But I also don't really want to just get filings all over my bed. So I have a paper here to catch it, and I'm tracing the pendant knee button on it, so that I can try to make sure that I actually keep the circle centered, the center circle centered properly. I mean, it only matters so much. It's gonna be a pendant for a macrame necklace with some coming out like, I'm trying to I'll just show on one side and you can assume it's symmetrical, but with like one part coming from, assuming that it's a whole circle, not just that little bit in the middle right now, like it is right now. There's a Karen. So assuming that it's a whole circle coming out like that, and then there'll be like a wooden bead, and then there'll be like another section that comes up to meet up with that, and then continue from there, and then another wooden bead, and probably one more. I'm not sure exactly. It depends on how long I end up making it, which depends on how long the person I'm making it for wants it, but she hasn't actually sent me the length yet. So welcome, Karen.
Hi. I did feel like a good thing to interrupt to say hi. It's just like,
These are my 4 new braided headband colors, by the way.
yay.
I bet you can guess which one's my favorite.
Either the 4th of July or the oceanic blue.
Blue.
Oceanic blue. What do we name this one again, Karen? I forget.
Pastel baby. Or
Pastel baby.
pastel.
And this one's cotton candy pink.
Seems accurate.
Well, it has
Thread in it,
the
guys.
thread in it that I use on my cotton candy headbands. So
I was being sincere when I said seems accurate.
no, I know that's it's actually called Times Square, but the color's called Times Square. But I always call
haven't
it cotton
actually been
candy.
to Times Square, but of what I've seen of pictures, I feel like it's more accurate for cotton candy than for Times Square. I don't think Times
That's
Square is really
awesome.
any one given color.
Right? All right, I'm on to my butterflies now. Karen, what you working on?
It's gonna be 4th of July earrings.
Nice.
What?
4th of July earrings. So last year I made Lisa these beautiful 3-star earrings. They
Oh,
went
did I
red,
send
white,
you
and
that
blue.
picture?
I took a picture last year, so I
Okay,
didn't
good.
need it. And the pattern's relatively simple, but it's 3 stars. And they're attached, and it's red, white, and blue. And I'm thinking also making a like fringe style one, where it's blue with white dots in the pyramid piece, and then this like alternates white and red on the fringe pieces. So like it's a flag. I can't tell if Caroline is confused because of her stitching or because of my description.
Because she's filing. She's filing.
I was measuring, trying to make sure that I actually get this button that I'm turning into a ring, essentially, to be a ring shaped pendant. And I, as I was explaining earlier, I couldn't clamp it down because it's curved, semi-bowl shaped, and so trying to clamp it was going to result in
Difficulties.
potentially breaking it. And so I kind of tried drilling it, just like holding it by hand, and the drill bit kept catching it. So I've just been filing it. It's gonna be a hot minute before it's done.
Nice.
But I'm trying to make sure, because I have my round file that I'm trying to make sure that I go evenly to both sides here until it's wide enough for my curved file to fit into. And then I can use that to widen in each direction and then to smooth it out into a proper circle.
Nice.
In other words, Caroline's overcomplicating everything, but not without ingenuity, per usual.
And it's gonna come out amazing.
What?
She said it's
And
gonna
it's gonna come out amazing.
We'll see.
I'm like, I'm missing one. I'm not.
Right now, it just has to come out at all, because the rate I'm going, that's not a guarantee.
Oh, geez.
I spent a very long time searching different parts of the internet for some sort of wooden ring-shaped anything of the appropriate size that was work for what I was picturing, and none of them were quite right. The closest one, like I would have gotten it, like it was unfinished, but I would have gotten it and stained it and finished it myself, except that you had to purchase it in a pack of 10 for $16, and I only need one. And even if I ended up using the rest of them, I didn't want to start with that presumption, you know? So, anyway, Little Women is a
First
book.
chapter was artistic attempts.
Artistic attempts, indeed. They've briefly mentioned Amy's art before, but I feel like they never really talked about it very much until this chapter. Am I correct about that, or am I remembering wrong?
They mentioned it was a passion of hers, and then I think they mentioned at the beginning of the first chapter of the second part how Aunt March loved to encourage her painting. But beyond that, we haven't really talked about her artistic side.
But we definitely got a lot more info on that. A lot more info. I don't know where the "of" in that sentence came from. I can't English.
It's
Words
okay.
are hard. What'd you think?
Well, I liked the way to describe how she went through phases of different types of art.
And it's very realistic too, because we all do that.
I was gonna say, and every single one of us was like, I
never
don't
tried
know
that
what you're
medium before.
talking about. Oh gosh. It was, I won't elaborate on this until we get to it, but I had very much the same reaction to Joe's writing in the next chapter too. But yeah.
I didn't know what the second one was, the poker stabbing or the poker strikes. I'm assuming it had to do with a wood poker and burning images on wood.
A fire poker. She was basically she was using a fire poker to practice wood burning on the like wood that was then going to actually be burned.
Like, you can't burn this one, it has art on it.
They all have art on them. We need something to keep us warm. Burn the chair. Or you know, Joe's novel.
Oh, I forgot about that one.
I feel like this took place over the 3 years, like all these different art styles. I don't think she just like went month to month. I think like she went over the 3 years that were skipped. She went through these art styles. That's how I imagined it in my head, just like her flowing through these.
I was just thinking, I kind of wonder, because some of it sounded like was younger than the first part of the book. Like it had started even earlier than that. At least to me it did. I don't know. But I was kind of wondering like where, not earlier, right now as we were talking about it, where the burning stuff into the wood and then having her art burned fell in conjunction with burning her sister's book.
Interesting. She had a fire phase.
I
You went a little pyro.
was gonna say, who among us did not have a pyro phase?
I still kind of do. When I'm like burning the end of ribbons, I'll light a candle and I just watch it like smoke as it goes through the fire. Like, gee. I
I would light candles and blow them out to relight them. I may have once sat with candles, pouring the melted wax from them onto my hand and made an entire glove of wax.
we used to have a candle warmer and we get the big candles and we would literally just like wait till it was all melted, stick our hand in and have a case of wax.
They're
And
like, what you doing? We're hiding our fingerprints.
I'm pretty sure this was hotter than those usually get,
Oh, I'm sure.
considering that it was like,
Actual burning wax. Yeah.
I had some very, very red parts of my hand after.
I have finished 1 star for all who care to see.
Pretty.
Blue star.
I have vaguely widened some bits of this that you wouldn't be able to tell if I held it up that it was any different from when I started.
I finished 1 butterfly shape without the white. See, this is what it looks like with the white. This is what it looks like without.
So then, there's the,
You decided to have a
how do
party.
you pronounce
with
that word? Fate.
A fete.
A fete.
I've heard it
The only
pronounced
reason I
both
know
fet
that is
and
'cause I
fate.
recently watched Shadow and Bone and they call it a fete.
I've heard it
Yes.
pronounced both ways at different points. I think it might be pronounced fate in some regional parts of British Isles or something. And I watch and listen to so many British things so that I can't always remember.
I believe it's pronounced fete.
And I could be entirely wrong about that too. Like, I have no idea. What do I know? So anyway, so Amy's fetish.
I have to assume it was an oil painting class. Because it was talking about her class finishing up and she was talking about having money from work. So I'm assuming this is after the 3-year gap and she was in an oil class and like an artistry oil painting class.
Could have been watercolors.
Oh, did she switch to watercolors after oil painting?
I don't remember. She
No, I
went
think-
through a bunch of different things. I just
I don't
once she
remember
was
watercolors being
actually
one of
doing
them.
proper classes instead of just like fiddling with it on her own. It could have been, I mean, it could have just been a general painting class that went through several different things too.
Oil
Yeah.
was after wood burning because she went after fire comes oil. So yeah. So I'm not right about the oil painting at all. It's okay.
I think
Then there was the
They-
charcoal and the crayon sketching.
Yeah.
And then,
she had already gone through a bunch of those different things, but I think that I don't think that they ever specified what her painting class was.
They didn't.
scenery. She was doing scenery, but never described what exactly the medium she was doing.
Oh, which reminds me, I have been wanting to check. So this has come up a couple times in the Jane Austen thing also. Let me think how to say this.
see if I can remember how to do this because it's been a year.
Right?
Um, yep. Okay, so I'm struggling to find what the exact answer right off the bat, but crayons. They talked about some things being softened when she switched to using crayons. Wax crayons as we know them, well, Crayola crayons weren't invented until 1903. I believe that some people had messed around with some paraffin wax crayons earlier than that, but crayons had existed for a very, very long time. Things that were called crayons that were not crayons as we know them. And I've been wanting to look up what they were actually made of, because it's mentioned at one point in Pride and Prejudice. It's mentioned, and there are a few different things that it's come up with in different things that I like, podcasts I listen to and things. So where it came up again in this, I meant to look it up and I've forgotten to. The only thing I'm seeing distinctly is that the first crayons were made of charcoal and oil, but I don't know if that changed between when they were first made and when they became wax, if there was something different in between. Because I'm not going to spend our entire hour scouring the internet trying to find the answer to it. But that is what I'm seeing here, at least initially, is that the first ones, it says the first crayons appeared in Europe and were made with charcoal and oil, but we don't know when. It can also be chalk or other materials. If they're made of oiled chalk, they are oil pastels, which I've often wondered if oil pastels are what they would refer to as crayons in like the Victorian era, but I'm not
Entirely sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure like which specific thing. Even says like in the 19th century, other pigments appeared, not just charcoal, and Jane Austen mentioned crayons in Pride and Prejudice in 1813. It doesn't specify what that would have been. A method of substituting wax with oil was found, making crayons harder and less likely to melt. So it wasn't until later that they eventually figured out that they could use wax instead of oil. But yeah. Anyway, that's my little side
She
trip.
has this group of 12 girls, and she's like, oh, only half of them will come. I liked her argument with her mother, because it is such a very teenage thing to be like, I'm independent, I'm making my own money, I can do what I want with my money.
And I happen to know better about this, and you're entirely wrong.
I remember my first paycheck, I was like, yay, money I can spend. And now I'm like,
I remember my first paycheck ended up going to a computer that a broken computer. We're not going to get into that story. It went to a broken computer to repair. It went to repairing my aunt's laptop that I supposedly broke. That's a story we're not going to get to. But that's my first paycheck went.
I genuinely do not even remember what my first paycheck was, because I had like little things of, making money from babysitting here and there and things. And I think the first thing that I had, like the first, like, W-2 was for working at my college, and that was on the work assistance program, and every bit of that was automatically applied to my tuition. So, like, and
You
then
didn't see a penny.
and then I was working in ministry after, and then got married, and then I was selling Pampered Chef. So any semblance of paycheck was really just commissions of based on whatever I had actually managed to sell, and was just a little bit of supplementary income. And it was literally when I started where we work now that I started actually having regular paychecks for the first time in my life.
I feel like Amy's money was basically commissions as well. Selling her artwork.
Yeah. Well, I know she works for Aunt March. She's her companion that like Joe had done before. When Joe was working as
Joe. Yeah.
what?
She took over for Joe.
Yeah, but
right?
Joe was getting paid for that. That was
She was selling her art pieces. For some reason, I thought she was selling her art.
she might be also doing that. I just know that Joe they had made a point that like Meg and Joe
They're all
and
getting paid, yeah.
that they had to work, and like they had to work things that they could get paid for, and that's why Joe worked for Aunt March, as was her companion. So when Amy became Aunt March's companion instead, I assume she also started getting paid in Joe's place. So yeah, I figured that was what the money was from, or at least some of it. At any rate, her determination of exactly what everything has to look like and all of that is, I can't decide if it's painful or hilarious. It's a little bit of both.
The reality being like, oh, it's only gonna cost this, it's only gonna cost that. And then when you go and actually do it, you're like, oh, there's a lot more to it than that.
Oh my gosh. I was like, oh, every single thing I ever budget. Yeah.
There you go. I was like, yeah, I've been there, Amy.
I've been there a lot. Literally right now with the vacation that we're planning for my family, which I'll probably mention again toward the end of this, but just throwing out there that we will have one more bookcraft session before my vacation, and then we will, well, technically I'll be back by the time of the next bookcraft session, but like I'm just getting back like the day before, and I'm not going to want to have all of that going at the same time. So settling back into real life and all. So anyway, yep. Forgot what I was about to say.
So she gets 12 people. She gets them all invited. Most of them say they'll come. I'm going to guess about 10 say they're going to come.
Only 6 or 8 of them will come, and then like 10 or 11 of them say they'll come.
I said most, so yeah.
Well, it said most, so that's why I didn't say all 12. I'm like 9, 10, 11, somewhere in there.
I want to say props to Amy to having a rain date. Can we just like give props to Amy for that, for having a rain date?
I give props to Amy for having a rain date and full solidarity for regretting having a rain date.
Right? I just
say one day.
What? Karen, what'd you say?
I was like, why couldn't I have just said one day?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Fully understand
she
that.
like spends all of her money on all this expensive food because they're rich, so they can't have poor food. And she buys this expensive ride. She rents this expensive ride only to have one person show. And I gotta say,
Well,
I
on the second day, after she had to buy the food twice.
right?
But Mr.
I
March was
felt
supposed to catch a lobster, and he didn't. So she had to go out and buy a lobster.
yeah. I felt so bad for Amy because Carrot reminded me of our last birthday party where we invited like 20 people and literally one person showed up.
Yep. Caroline, you
I
were there
was
by
going
your phone.
to. I was sick. No,
I
wait, one of my
know,
kids was
I
sick.
know.
One
You
of
were
my
there
kids
by
was
your
sick.
phone. I think I remember you video called exactly
Video
what
called
you
and
were
you
about to do.
signed happy
That
birthday
happy
to us.
birthday.
I felt so bad. I was like, I want to be there.
We invited like 20 people and they're like, oh yeah, sure, sure. And then
I had
no
one
one
friend
came.
show up, and she had one friend show up, and that was it.
I video called in.
But I felt Amy's pain. Like I felt it so much.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
like,
no, I've been there so many times. So many times. I think it's part of why I hate my birthday and refuse to ever tell anybody my birthday and like let people acknowledge it, because I was so painfully shy growing up, and I hated having things publicly acknowledged. And instead of being able to get used to that, I had nobody at my birthday parties every single year.
We rarely had
And so it just
because,
got worse and worse instead.
I remember it was mostly a family affair because we shared birthday parties with our older brother who was born one day.
so yeah. I think up until we were 10, my mom just had a birthday party for all 3 kids at once. And then after that, we kind of started having parties like a monthly birthday party, like it was all August birthdays.
One of my sisters and I, our birthdays are 3 days apart. The regularity with which we had to have joint birthday parties of not like we had the same age friends. Yeah.
All I know is I've always had to share my birthday.
And
I've always
her
had-
friends
Yeah.
came. It's a good thing I love her and her friends.
Right?
Yeah, I think the only time I didn't have to share a birthday party, I had no friends. When I was in New York, I didn't really have friends or birthday parties.
I'm your friend.
Now, but when I was in New York 5 years ago, I didn't
Well,
even know.
I wasn't in New York 5 years ago, and I didn't know either of you. Life is better now.
Yes.
I'm still not in New York, and I know you.
And I'm not in New York. I'm getting charged twice the price for half the space. It's not a lie.
She really was too. And they were trying to increase her rent.
Did I look like I was in any way questioning this?
No.
No, but for any viewers who may watch,
As I'm sitting here like,
I can say
uh-huh. And you're
Yeah.
like, no, really?
See, okay, so back to the story. So props to Amy again, because she did, keep her composure and still made sure that this one person had a great time. Like, she did her best.
And Marmee and Joe just immediately like, wait, clear stuff away. Let's not make this more awkward. Like, doing everything they could to like make everything work for, I mean, even with like, okay, some lessons are best learned the hard way. So she's not going to, as my girls have this propensity for not wanting to listen to advice, I guess I'll have to let her learn it the hard way again. Basically what it said.
experience is the best teacher.
And and still like trying to make that then as easy on her as possible, as painless as possible for something that had to be painful. And or at least uncomfortable and awkward. And then she you know, they still, like Marmee said later, like they all did their best to make it a good day for her. Their poor father, though. Like, why are they all laughing? He spent, even after being back from the war for several years, I think he had been gone long enough that he just has no idea, like, when they go off on their little things that they totally all know what they're thinking, and he's just like, I am lost in this house full of women that I do not understand. I love them all so much. I have no idea what's happening right now.
That's accurate.
He's one man surrounded by 4 daughters, a wife, and a maid. He has no
cook?
idea what's going on.
Doesn't
she a
fit
man?
still. I would very much like to be able to just use this file now.
Right? That file's still too big.
I think
Alright.
Well, I don't
After
think the file's
mine-
going to change size.
I think one of my favorite parts is she, while getting the lobster, ran into one of Lori's college friends. And
I fully expected him to just randomly show up.
and then for Lori's next birthday, she gave him a small lobster figurine, like totally expecting the college friend to just like tell the story of the lobster from the
Full evidence. Because she said, like, oh, well, they'll laugh about it later, but at least I won't have to listen to them laughing about it.
Right?
Full evidence that, yep, they definitely did.
Hmm.
Okay.
And it is
so,
true Lori fashion.
now that we are down to 20 minutes.
Well, we didn't start talking about the first chapter till almost 20 minutes, so you know.
Yeah, I
I
was late.
mean, even so, I mean, no. Yeah, anyway, we often run out of chapter to talk about, so I'm glad that we have more to talk about this time.
Alright, so the
They were
next
just highly
chapter,
amusing chapters.
literary lessons was the next one.
And as a writer, who is working on editing yet another story right now, and I color code everything. I always make myself a little key for how I'm color coding everything, and then I color code everything for how I'm going to change stuff. And this is a story that I wrote probably 6-7 years ago, and just found on my drive, and with all of my comments from my beta readers, but I had never gone back and done any of the editing. And I think I needed to be away from it for a while. And now I have like all of these other ideas of what to do with it. So I'm trying to actually get it done now. Fix it up better. But like just reading some of the comments from my beta readers, and I'm just like, ouch. But you're right. I know you're right, but ouch.
Everything I put on fan fiction, I've gotten good comments for. So it's like, oh well, at least it's okay enough for fan fiction.
Yeah. I mean, even when I write fan fiction, I'm like, must be perfect. And I go back
Right.
through, I'll read back through my fan fiction from like 6 months ago, and I'm like, shoot, I missed a comma there. And I will edit the document and re-upload it.
So, I've never actually written a story, but I have had, and I actually got like 6 chapters into it once. I have this idea for this trilogy that I've had since high school. And I'm like, I've only gotten into like 6 chapters of it.
Dude, I had an 11-book series of a whole made-up world that I have yet to finish. Even one of them.
I have a degree in writing, and like a novel and a trilogy and another novel and a lot of short stories in the works. And
I just
then,
have passion.
among other things,
I've got no
and
grammar, no color.
crazy amounts of fan fiction. Actually, I'm not nearly the most prolific fanfic writer out there. The actual amount of like published fan fiction I have is like, let me see, actually, because if I go into fanfiction.net app, CK girl, I have 20 actually published, but
That's one I have.
I have in my Google Docs, actually Google Drive. What is that? In my Google Drive fanfic folder, I have,
Oh, I don't want to count that many.
4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36, 40, 44, 48, 52, 56, 60, 64. I have 68 fanfics either completed or in progress in my fanfic folder right now.
Oh,
Wow.
I should probably finish
That's
some of
nice.
those. And this is why I never have time to get anything done, because I'm always doing the other thing that I also didn't get done.
I hear you.
So yeah, Joe's description of, or the description of Joe's writing frenzies, very, 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 very relatable.
I find it
Okay.
relatable not just to writing, but to like crafting in general. Like
It,
we all have
it
those things.
definitely is. But I went through one of my current fanfics that I'm still working on, but I went through probably a month of just like all I wanted to do was write this, and all I wanted to do was write. I was writing that. I was writing my primary novel that I'm working on right now. I was writing, like, going back and working on some of my other fanfics for at least a month this past spring. And I was like, do I have to do other things? Like, must I do other things? Because all I want to do is write and not like not have to anything else. And unfortunately, they still insisted that I should show up for work. I don't know what that's about. Like, I was like, you guys you could just pay me to sit and write my stories instead. They weren't buying it. Literally.
I will get so bad on days that I have set aside for doing crafts. I will focus so bad I will forget to eat all day. Like,
I forget to eat, except that I get really, I mean, you know, you two know, the internet at large probably doesn't, but I tend to get very shaky in general.
Attached to blue to the wrong side.
I was gonna say the blue looks a little high.
It's on the right side. It's supposed to be over here, and it is on the wrong side.
It makes an L.
I fail to understand the problem.
So it's supposed to like kind of zigzag down, and
it's supposed to zigzag down, and it's kind of zigzagging back up.
It's zigzagging back up.
It's supposed to be over here.
I still like it. Anyway, so I forgot what I was about to say.
We distracted you.
So hard to do. But yeah, anyway.
So
crafting frenzies, writing frenzies, artistic frenzies of any variety. Yes, that is they. Is the short version of that.
Yes.
I want to know about Beth. We really haven't learned about much of what she's done over the last 3 years.
I think we will soon, because the next chapter is domestic something, which my audiobook started playing and it started talking about Meg. So I'm like, no. So I think that's probably something we're gonna do next time, is something on Meg and something on Beth. Because I kind of feel like these are like update chapters. But I like how it mentions this one, Literary Lessons, mentions that Jo has been doing stories. She has been publishing them in the paper. And then she gets this great idea thanks to going to this lecture about pyramids. Which even she didn't
the
quite
descriptions
understand the point.
Surrounding that is hilarious too. Like, I guess there's probably some reason that knowing about periods, wow, pyramids is going to somehow help people who are more worried about how they're going to be mining coal. But okay.
And then she's reading this comic. Is it a comic? It's like a newspaper comic, I think.
It sounded like it. I'm not sure exactly.
And apparently there's a contest and grand prize is $100. I'm assuming it's like a quarterly contest or maybe a monthly contest, because it said she won it several times that year. So, but that confused me because it also said that she waited 6 weeks for the response. So.
Yeah, I'm thinking probably it was a multi-month thing. Yeah. Every couple months kind of thing.
So then she decides to publish her baby, her first novel.
Yep.
Oh, how scary and nerve-wracking that is. Will the world like you?
She mails it to 3 publishers. And at this point, guys, Jo's younger than us. Can I just say that?
She's half our age, man.
Vicious.
And okay, I have to read you a poem after you talk about this.
And they tell her that they will publish, one of them tells her they will publish her story if she cuts it down to a third and something else. Can't remember. But I was like, why? Why? Like, I feel like she should have waited to sell it. But it was because she didn't sell it because Beth said that she would like to read it soon. And that broke my heart. Can I just say?
Lisa, you're my editor. You're gonna be reading my stuff well before anybody else.
Beth. Sweet, sweet Beth. Joe's desperation to be published. Even though she's, what is she, 19 at this point?
Yeah.
Is that what we determined last time?
Yeah.
So she's even younger than this, but it reminds me of this poem by John Milton. His sonnet number 7, entitled On His Being Arrived at the Age of 23. How soon hath time, the subtle thief of youth, stolen on his wing my 23 year. My hasting days fly on with full career, but my late spring no butter blossom showeth. Perhaps my semblance might deceive the truth, that I to manhood am arrived so near, and inward ripeness doth much less appear that some more timely happy spirits endueth. Yet be it less or more, or soon or slow, it shall be still in strictest measure even to that same lot, however mean or high, toward which time leads me and the will of heaven. All is, if I have grace to use it so, as ever in my great taskmaster's eye. Basically, I'm 23 and I haven't done anything with my life.
I can second that. Just add another
At
decade.
23, I felt like my life was ending. I'll say that. Yeah.
I got married at 23, actually. It wasn't so bad at 23.
I got married at 24. I don't know. I've always had a different perspective on age than most people I've discovered. But even in college, studying that in one of my lit classes, that was sophomore year, so I was either 19 or 20. And like, she's just my teacher sitting there like, and he's freaking out about what he hasn't accomplished by age 23. I mean, that's not much older than most of you. And I still had classmates like, yeah, but I totally understand that. Like, I would really like to. And I'm just sitting there like, guys, like, if it takes another decade or two, that's still not that long in the grand scheme of things. But I've always been like that. I was just talking to somebody about this past weekend. I'm talking to my pastor about this because when I was at summer camp, he was the summer camp director, and people would talk about how old he was all the time. And I'm just like, they are joking, right? Because he's not old. And they're like, it took me quite a while to figure out that no, some of these teenagers around me, this was a summer camp for teens, and some of these teenagers genuinely thought that this guy who was probably 35 at the time was so old. And I'm just sitting there like, that's not old. I don't. And then he now, like, I'm saying that, like, you know, I was saying that to him this weekend. I'm like, I've always been like that. And I'm like, and now you're, you know, he's in his 50s now. And I'm like, and you're still not that old. Like, it's just, I don't see it. Like, I don't, you're not old until you're like old enough to be, standing on the deck of a ship throwing the heart of the ocean in. Like, you gotta be like 80s at least before I'll actually consider you old. And I mean, 70s maybe. And I've always been like that, even when I was little. And so, like, I see things like that, like, okay, but like, yeah, it's awesome if you can accomplish stuff at like 14 or something. Like,
Oh.
that's amazing. Or if you accomplish it at 30, or if you don't accomplish it until you're 80, or whatever. It's awesome when you accomplish it, whenever you accomplish it. And then I've discovered that, like, that's not the perspective that most people hold.
The author of the Aragon or the Inheritance series was 17 when he published the first Aragon book. He was
Yeah.
okay, he had just graduated college and he published his first book. And I'm thinking at the time I was really inspired because I was in high school. I was like, oh, I want to write my first book. And now, almost 2 decades later, I still haven't published a book. And
Right.
he's published 4.
Of 5.
5, right.
Christopher Paolini is an amazing inspiration to new writers because he is one of those people that was able to start young and publish young. But there are a lot of authors out there as well that start in their like 30s and 40s, sometimes even 50s. Yeah. So age is really a number when it comes to being a writer. It really is, because nobody's going to ask your age when they read your book. Nobody.
And that's
They see a title and an author. That's it.
Ken McGee was in his 30s when he published his first big book, NCIS. In his 30s.
why do you know this?
Because I watched NCIS several times. I watched the show on repeat, man.
See, so dream the dream, people. You're never too old.
Yeah, exactly. When I was in college, I had I want to say classmate. I don't think she and I actually had any classes at the same time. But we were there at the same time. She graduated either the same year as me or the year before me, which means either she started the same year as me or the year after me, because I was there for 5 years. The whole thing with getting 2 bachelors. But she was in her 60s. And she was like, I've always wanted to get a bachelor's degree. I never got one, and I'm getting one now. And like, you're not. I think our society puts so much emphasis on like the timeline of when things should be done or whatever. And it is inspiring when people do things kind of outside of that. But I think sometimes the inspiration should be, see, so you can do things anytime. And it ends up being, see, so you're more amazing if you do it outside the timeline. And like, no, there is no timeline.
So I agree. I had a timeline. Like, I always imagined that I'd meet someone by 22, I'd be married by 24, and I'd have kids by 28. And here I am at 32. I met someone, but whether or not I'll marry them still up in the air. Like,
You met a lot of
know?
someone's in your life.
Romantically.
I have to be a pest.
Yeah.
But it is 8 o'clock. So we didn't even finish talking about the second half of that chapter, really. I mean, we briefly mentioned that Joe wrote the sensationalist thing, but
I think she
and-
learned. So basically, to wrap up the last chapter, basically, she published her book. She didn't get as much for it as she thought it was, although it was quite a big chunk of change, $300. But like,
I'll take it.
right?
I'll
But
take it
she got a lot
today.
of backlash from the like critics and stuff that didn't make sense to her. And I think that's another thing as a writer to remember is like to take everything with a grain of salt, because as she read it, she realized and she took in perspective. And although she wished she had waited till they accepted her full story, um, she still learned a lot as an author from releasing her first book.
Um, and part of what she learned was you can't please everybody.
Which she tried really hard to do.
My
Yeah,
hardest lesson, first drafts. They don't have to be perfect. I still haven't mastered that lesson.
yeah, me either. She also is very, it always strikes me that, you know, with her tendency to write romance with her, which is funny considering how much she doesn't like romance. She doesn't want it in her life, but she wants to write it. And she doesn't she doesn't seem like somebody who would be so sensitive, but she very much is. And she always has been. I mean, she's the one who's really close to Beth and taking care of her so much when Beth was sick, and like she's always been very sensitive, but her kind of I wish I was a man, let me charge ahead and do all the things and go have the adventures kind of a nature. It's hard to, I mean, you wouldn't expect that. You know, the same thing as I was saying before, a couple weeks ago, that you wouldn't expect her to be like, oh, I don't want us to leave home. Stereotypically, a character like her that, you know, oh, I'm gonna be the man of the house, and I'm gonna, you know, Mr. whatever she called herself, and go do all the things, and she'd want to go on all the adventures, and she doesn't. She wants to keep everybody at home and keep their own little circle at home and dream of the adventures but not take the risks. And I think that that fits right in with her sensitivity, that she wants to write the adventures. She wants to dream of them and then write out the dreams. But that can only mean so much when you haven't lived, and she hasn't lived much outside of her little circle that she doesn't want to ever have change. And so that sensitivity that she experiences it's definitely something that I feel, it's definitely something that every writer I've ever known, anybody, and I use writer in the sense of anybody who writes and shows their writing to others in any capacity. It's hard. It's a piece of yourself, and it's hard. But it's a necessary part of the process. I mean, I guess it's not a necessary part of the process in order to be a writer, but it's a necessary part of the process in order to be a writer whose writing is being read.
Well,
And it's necessary for growing in your writing, because if you don't go through the pain of that, then you don't grow much. You stay stagnant in the kind of writing that you already have. Anyway, we're like 5 minutes over, so our next bookcraft session is on June 6th, and then we will not be having another one for
July 4th.
I was gonna say probably until like July 18th.
I've got other things to do than bookcraft on the 4th.
Yeah.
July 4th on the 2nd.
Stay tuned. I may decide, given that the 4th is what comes after that. I may decide to try to do June 20th. I'll announce it on the Pixie Elegance Facebook page one way or the other. Obviously I'll let you two know, but I'll put it on the Pixie Elegance Facebook page if we do decide to, but otherwise it will be a minute before we see each other again. Well, we'll see each other before everybody else sees us. All our many, 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 many pixels that watch us. Anyway,